Hello everybody, it me Scoop, and no other way to say this, Presence is fascinating. Shot in 11 days on a $2 million budget, you can kind of tell. It doesn't look very visually impressive or super striking, but that's not to say that it looks bad or anything. It's just not very demanding or high budget. It's still a very impressive film. So if you don't already know, Presence is a new horror film from director Steven Soderbergh behind Contagion, which is, I think, one of the greatest movies of all time, as well as Ocean's 11, which you probably have also seen. I say horror movie in such aggressive quotations because this is not a horror movie. For some reason, it is marketed as a horror movie, it is listed as a horror movie, but there is not a single horror element to be found here. I think the issue is a low-budget drama film centering around a family that, shot from the perspective of a mostly friendly ghost, is, let's be fair, a little bit difficult to market. So being able to say, Paranormal Activity, but from the ghost perspective, now that is a lot more likely to get butts in seats. So the basic setup of the film is that a family of four moves into a new home where a presence watches over them and takes special interest in the daughter as it watches from afar as the family begins to crumble at the seams. The mother heavily prioritizes her son over her daughter for seemingly no reason at all rather than just plain favoritism, and also has made some sort of legal mistake in her past that is starting to rear its ugly head again. The daughter feels incredibly isolated, having recently lost her friend to a drug overdose, and now feels isolated from her family as well as she begins to feel this presence while the rest of the family doesn't believe in her. The son is, let's just say it, he's an arrogant asshole. He's good at sports, he's popular at school, but he doesn't understand what his sister is going through on an emotional level, nor does he try to. And of course there's the father, who's just doing his best to hold them all together. The father is definitely my favorite part of the film. It's so refreshing to see a gruff father figure character who actually has a really strong emotional intelligence and is really doing his best to connect with his family, be a good father, and can, at times, be very emotionally vulnerable. Chris Sullivan is doing a fantastic job in the role, being able to give the appearance of this gruff father figure with a deeper voice, while also bringing an emotional weight to the role that I think a lot of people wouldn't be able to balance, especially given that the film is shot mostly in long takes. Lucy Liu as the mother is doing less of a good job. Not to say she's giving a bad performance or anything, it's just she doesn't nearly have enough to work with here. I mostly think she was just given some strange direction, the best example of which being that there's a few scenes where she is talking with her son, and it's obviously just meant to show her clear favoritism for the son over the daughter. However, Lucy Liu's performance mostly feels like she's trying to flirt with the son, and I don't think that's what they were going for. I really don't have much to say about the performances of the three kids in the movie, the son, the daughter, and their mutual friend / love interest. The kids really get some piss poor whack ass dialogue in this film that was very clearly written by a guy in his 40s who doesn't regularly interact with teenagers. Some of these lines of dialogue were heavily cringe-inducing. One of the best examples being that every person in the son's friend group has to have a cool name like Jimbo. Like, no, what are you talking about, bro? There's no Jimbo, okay? It's 2024, nobody's called fucking Jimbo anymore. The actor for the friend particularly gets screwed over as he gets some pretty meaty, weighty dialogue towards the second half of the movie that he's expected to deliver like from 0 to 100, and the dialogue is also so on the nose that it just makes it extra cringy. For example, there's a scene where he's attempting to emotionally manipulate the daughter, Chloe, and he just sits there silently for a moment before he looks back up at her and goes, "God, I'm so alone." And it's like, okay, like we just cannot take that seriously, I'm sorry. The camera is also above his face as the presence floats above him and Chloe for the scene, so his face is covered by a bunch of his hair, which, yeah, thematically works because he's being deceitful, I guess, but also it just makes the dialogue that much more silly when it already didn't have too much silly wiggle room to work with. And I cannot lie, while we're on negatives, Presence does not get off on the right foot at all. The opening act of this movie ranges anywhere from not that good to downright bad. I think this movie is much better off on streaming, where you can kind of just get cozy and lock in with this family story for like barely over an hour. There's certainly nothing about the visuals, the score, the sound design, anything like that that would warrant you needing to see it in a theater over just a nice TV in your own home. And I think because so much of the movie hinges on how the characters make you feel and how you connect with them, watching this movie with an audience who might annoy the shit out of you, which happens all the time in theaters nowadays because people have lost theater etiquette for some reason, you're just better off seeing the movie alone. I think the audience can actually be fairly reductive to the experience. But like I said, because the first act, the first 30 minutes or so are anywhere from not good to straight up really bad, it won't do too well on streaming because people simply won't make it far enough into the movie to get invested and get to the spectacular final 30 minutes here. And I can't stress enough, those final 30 minutes are spectacular. Every plot thread that you think is going absolutely nowhere suddenly crashes together, and it is really unlike anything I've ever seen, honestly. And that 20-minute gap between the first 30 and the final 30 minutes really does wonders because I actually didn't realize how invested in the movie I was by the time the climax began. Somewhere along the way, my brain went from really not liking the movie to really being invested in the movie, and I don't exactly know how that happened, but I guess that's just the magic of filmmaking at work in this middle act. I would say the main problem here is that the presentation of the movie is just not very good. I get that the whole point and the whole movie hinges around the fact we're watching this movie from the ghost perspective, and by the end of the movie, it works very well. I think the main problem here is that the presentation of presence is just really strange. For a vast majority of the movie, the fact that you're watching it from the ghost's perspective has just fuck all to do with anything going on in the movie or really just like the movie itself. The ghost really doesn't do anything, and the characters don't really address the fact that the house is haunted or that there's a presence until you get closer to the second half and the climax. So the presentation of the ghost just kind of floating around the house is really going to hinder your enjoyment, if anything, especially given the fact that sometimes the ghost just kind of mentally goes AFK and skips to another scene, and the way the movie shows that to us is that the ghost will kind of just float off away from the family and the drama, and the screen will go black for a few seconds before cutting to the next scene, and it's just very distracting. However, as the movie goes along, we get less and less of these cuts, and they jump through shorter periods of time, which does wonders for your enjoyment of the film. And I think that's about all you can know before I start getting into anything that might stick in your head too much while you're watching the movie and might impact your experience a bit too much. This movie is good to just go in blind, understanding it's not a horror, it's a family drama with some supernatural elements to it. Genuinely, I don't care if you hate everything about horror movies, like there's just nothing here to scare you. It's not trying to scare you. So if I haven't made it clear by now, you certainly should go watch Presence. Maybe if you can, like I did, find a theater that's mostly empty with a pretty cheap ticket, go see it in theaters. Otherwise, maybe just stay away from spoilers and wait for this one to come to streaming. But please, give it a chance, man. I get it. 30 minutes seems like a lot of time for a movie to not be very good. But the fact that the movie's only an hour and 20 minutes period, and just how fucking good the ending is. I mean, I have like all this pent up energy from the emotions of that ending that I just don't know what to do with. You really owe it to yourself to make it through and at least see if you like it or not. I can't guarantee you're gonna love it, but no matter what, you are gonna feel something at that climax, and I think that is worth the time investment here. So those of you who have seen the movie may disagree about a point I made earlier in the video. I brought it up once or twice, but if you have seen the movie and you disagree, stick around for the spoiler talk we're about to get into. But if you haven't seen the movie yet, thank you very much for watching. If I convinced you to go watch Presence, or at least to wait until it comes to streaming and give it a try, please give this video a like, I'd really appreciate it. And leave a comment after you've watched it. Let me know your thoughts. I'd love to discuss it further in the comments. But we gotta talk about spoilers now, so if you haven't seen the movie, time to get out of here. So, spoilers. Like I said, every plot thread at the end smashes together in a way unlike anything I've ever seen. Except for Lucy Liu's character's backstory. We never find out what she did that broke the law and is tearing the relationship with her husband apart. It's given a lot of screen time and a lot of emphasis on the family drama, but we never find out what it is. Now, usually, this inconclusive bullshit pisses me off like a lot. I get it. Usually, I need something definitive to grab onto in my conclusions, especially if you're gonna tease me with it so much like this movie does. However, when I stopped to think about it for more than like 2 seconds, I think I understand why they didn't tell us, and at least my understanding of it, I love that they didn't tell us. So obviously at the end of the film, it's revealed that Tyler was the presence the entire time. And I think that that is the core reason to why Lucy Liu's backstory is never explained. Tyler doesn't want to know what she did. There's of course that very awkward scene in the first 30 minutes where Lucy Liu's character drunkenly explains to him that everything she does for him, and he needs to remember that. So that scene is clearly revolving around her fear and guilt of whatever she did in the past coming back to haunt her, and Tyler, and I guess also Chloe, but less important to the scene, finding out about it. As much as I would love to know what exactly she did, some BoJack Horseman type shit perhaps, I have no idea, but Tyler probably doesn't want to know either. Whatever she did for him, and Tyler loved his mother, and even in death, he wouldn't want to change that. And I think that point is especially highlighted by the father's speech to Chloe, where he talks about how he didn't understand his mother, Chloe and Tyler's grandmother, for a long time because of her weird devotion to Christianity. He just didn't understand why she felt so strongly and did what she did, and it drove a major rift between them for many years. Naturally, the father greatly regretted this rift, and he wanted to close it before his mother passed away, which he luckily managed to do. He may not have understood his mother's actions, but whatever she did what she thought was best for him. And in the end, as long as it didn't cause any harm, it was for the best. Now, obviously, whatever Lucy Liu did probably did cause harm to somebody if there's legal repercussions, but I think the fact that we don't know what it is, its effects are outside of the boundaries of the story, is part of what they're going for here, in that Tyler he doesn't need to know. He loves his mother, and he doesn't want to know what she did because she did it for him. It's a pretty rare example where I actually do side with the filmmaker over an element that's pretty frustrating to the audience, because like I said, it works so well. It ties so many elements of the story together that even though I'm desperate to know what exactly she did, I can recognize it doesn't fucking matter, and the story is actually probably better with us not knowing because of the reasons I've just outlined. I will also say that while Presence is not a horror movie, the climax of the film is a little bit scary, simply for the fact that it's very possible that could happen to you, a friend, a family member, and while the film may be centered around this presence in the house, this typically malevolent, evil spirit manipulating small details in the background to harm the family, in the end, the spirit was there for good, and the real malevolent force working behind the scenes was the friend and potential family member that they let in the house in the first place. So yeah, a movie with a weak start, but a monster finish. Presence it's awesome. Honestly, I'm really glad that this movie got the horror villain POV thing right after In a Violent Nature was such a letdown. This is a far more interesting route to take rather than just leaning so hard into the horror elements. You lean more into the drama elements because every film at its core is a drama. So if the emotions and the characters are there, the audience is going to be invested, scares or not. And I think using that very medium to pull off your final twist is just beautiful, and it's spectacular. I mean, it's giving me chills just thinking about it now. So yeah, weak start, monster finish. I highly recommend Presence. Thank you very much for watching, and keep it crispy.